Welcome back to another edition of the Art and Business of Writing podcast, where I am Chris Jones with Kayla. Kayla, how's it going today?
Oh, it's going great. I'm wearing my stretchy pants. You know, it's the day after Thanksgiving, and I had a great feast.
Oh, man, I tell you, Thanksgiving, this is one of the few times we actually stayed home. We didn't want to travel, didn't want to deal with traffic, mess with the gas prices, which I don't know if they're increased where you are, but our gas prices have gone up by 20 cents since the beginning.
Oh, really? I didn't notice.
Yeah, so I was like, why don't we just stay home this year? I'll make some chicken, we'll lay low, watch some Christmas movies at the end of it, and that's exactly what we did. It was nice. Nice and clean. Yeah.
We had some friends over for dessert last night and played games and hung out, and that was good. And my husband did his famous splatchcock turkey, and it's always a hit.
Oh, nice. So what's new with you? We haven't kind of come together in a while, so I'd love to hear what you're working on these days.
Well, I've been busy this fall. That's probably one reason we haven't been together for a while. I published 2 books. I published one in August. It's called Broken Beginnings, and it's part of my Ina Ranch series in the Lay Crime Kindle world. And then in October, I published the second book in my Seasons of Love series. It's called Fighting for Fall. So yeah, I've been busy launching things and working on new things, and it's great.
Now, that's always great. I mean, being a productive writer is such a hard thing to do for a lot of writers, because I think we get caught up in trying to be productive, but then life catches up with us and we've got day jobs and we've got this or that or kids sports. So it's really cool to hear that despite, I know you have a family, that you're still able to make sure that you dedicate time to your family and still get all that writing done.
It's a challenge, but it's a priority. So I'm the only one that can get this stuff done, and I've committed to it.
Oh, yeah. So how's your nano? I know that we've been doing nano in our group. How are you doing these days with that? You want to share that with our listeners?
Well, I'll share. I am definitely not going to hit the 50K like I wanted to. I'm working on the 3rd book in my Seasons of Love series for Nano. And it became apparent very quickly that I probably wasn't going to hit the daily word count. However, something very good has happened. I'd gotten a little lax about writing every single day. I would have, over the summer and stuff, I did get a lot done, obviously, because I published 2 books this fall, but it was kind of splotchy writing. So this month, I've really focused on writing every single day. So even though it might not be the magical 1,667 words, I have written something on the new book every single day. So I will have a very good start on it by the time November's over. How about you, Chris?
Very good. Yeah. Me, I've been writing, I've gotten close to 40. I'm not far off. I should be done on time, maybe a day or 2 early, I'm hoping, but it's been good for me. I've been focusing on writing personal stories, a lot of just kind of backstory for myself, really self-discovery stories. And it's been really eye-opening for me, but it's been fun. Some stories have been challenging, but I've enjoyed doing it. And I'm not sure that I will actually physically publish anything with it. I'll share some of the stories maybe on my blog or something, because I think there's a lot of great lessons from my life that I can share and pass on. But it's been fun. It's been fun this year to do it without the pressure, I think, of publishing.
Nice. That sounds like a really almost therapeutic exercise.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
Cool. Well, I am so excited about today's guest. I mean, I'm about to bounce right out of my chair.
I know. I mean, to think that we landed such an awesome guest on our podcast. And of course, we always expect to land great guests, but this guest here really takes the cake. And we're so excited to bring her to you guys today who are listening.
That's right. We have Joanna Penn. She is an award-nominated New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of thrillers under the pen name J.F.Penn. She also writes inspirational nonfiction for authors and is an award-winning creative entrepreneur and international professional speaker. Her site, thecreativepenn.com, is regularly voted one of the top 10 sites for writers and self-publishers.
Ooh, exciting. So let's cut to the chase and dive right in. So without further ado, we'd like to bring you guys Joanna Penn.
Joanna, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks, Kayla and Chris.
Can you take a moment to expand on your bio for our audience?
Yeah, sure. So I guess, sort of winding the clock back, and many people might still be at this stage. I always wanted to write, but as you do, you get a proper job. And I worked as a cubicle slave for many years, implementing accounts payable into large corporates, which really is deathly boring, but it pays very well. And so I had this sort of golden handcuffs thing going on, but I was very miserable. And, I got to a point in my life, you hit 30 and you're like, what am I doing? This is completely pointless. And I was like, okay, well, how do I know what I want to do with my life? And so I started reading a lot of self-help books and, discovered that if I put my mind to it, I could change my life, sort of good American Tony Robbins, law of attraction and all that. It was around that time when The Secret came out. And so I started to put that into action. And I think that's the big difference. Like it's all very well thinking, I'm going to be a writer, but unless you actually put it into action, nothing happens. So I started writing a nonfiction book on career change, which I rewrote a number of years later. So it's out there now as Career Change. And I started a blog, thecreativepenn.com, pen with a double N, in 2008. This was before self-publishing was trendy, before podcasting was a thing. And pretty much from there, I was writing nonfiction. And then in 2009, I did NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, started writing my first novel. And in 2011, I left my job to be a full-time author. In 2015, my husband left his job because I was making enough money that, we could afford that. And now I guess 11 years after I started writing, I make a multi-six-figure income with my writing. And I'm an international speaker. I write fiction and non-fiction. I've got 26 books at this point. And life is very good, but it's, that's a sort of potted history, but it's been 11 years. So it's still a journey.
Wow, you have come so far. But I love that you point out it's been 11 years. It's not like, I started this 2 years ago and here I am. So I really love that you emphasize the journey so it's more realistic for all of us.
Yeah, well, and I think that's so important. And if you think of writing as a business, and I know this show has that emphasis, then you have to think of it like any other business. And we've all heard that whatever it is, 50 or 80% of businesses fail before 5 years. And I think that's the same for many authors. many authors give it up or, find that they only want to write 1 or 2 books. But if you want to make a long-term career and have a business as with your writing, you have to look at it from a long-term perspective because it takes time to, for people to find you, I guess. I've been podcasting since 2009 and I know you guys started a bit later on, but it's kind of amazing, how long it takes to build an audience, right?
Yes. It's a slow go and very organic. I don't think there's any major tricks or anything these days that just boom, grant you an audience. It's a snowball, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think there's ever been any tricks with anything. There is no get rich quick. It can be a get rich slowly. I think that's the thing with writing, because with intellectual property rights, and licensing and the internet and the way we can reach an audience worldwide, I really think now is the best time to be an author. So it's very exciting if you take control and learn along the way and try new things.
Definitely. And you have set us up perfectly to talk about our first topic, which is mindset. I know that's something that a lot of authors need help with, is getting their head wrapped around all the ups and downs of being an author. And so you've written a book about it. So I thought maybe we could talk about that.
Yeah, sure. The Successful Author Mindset, which I put out last year. And it came from, I wrote a blog post about the roller coaster of being a writer, that feeling that, I love writing. It's the best thing. It's all I want to do. And then I hate writing. It's such hard work. It just takes it all out of me. And, I want to be rich and famous and be like, have a film thing. And then I want to be on my own and I don't want anyone to know who I am. So no one will ever attack me. And there's all these kind of dualities on the mindset side, the self-doubt, the fear of failure and rejection and judgment. And we all go through the same stuff. So when I wrote that book, it's okay, we all feel this type of approach.
Right. No, that's so true. And I'd like to unpack some of those thoughts in broad strokes if we could. I mean, because you do talk about the relationship between writers and self-sabotaging behavior like doubt, like fear of failure, and even perfectionism, which I think really is a bane for a lot of writers. How can authors spot these habits and patterns creeping into their life and their writing?
Right. Well, I think the main thing is once you understand that everybody feels this way, is to kind of acknowledge those feelings and don't let them drag you down. So if you're feeling self-doubt, it's okay, I'm feeling self-doubt. What are the practical things I can do? So, for example, when you feel that your writing is a pile of crap, which many people do, many writers who've been writing for sort of 40 years feel their writing is a pile of crap. You can, as independent authors, this can be particularly difficult. So the main thing is, use professional editors. So go through a professional process to make your work the best it can be, and then get it out there. And I was talking to someone this weekend at a writers' conference, and really the difference between the professional writer that who has self-doubt and the other writer who hasn't yet published is that the professional writer is just living with that self-doubt, so acknowledging that it's there and doing it anyway. It's that kind of feel the fear and do it anyway type of thing. So that's one thing, is kind of acknowledging that it's happening and acknowledging that other writers have this, and you just have to publish, and you just have to take that as part of the creative journey. And then also I think, another thing would be developing professional habits so that you have a framework for your creative process. So for example, this morning, we're talking in my afternoon in the UK. And this morning I was actually in the cafe at sort of 7:30 my time, because it's getting dark now, it's autumn. I'm normally there at 7, and it was just so hard to get up. But I'm there first thing in the morning, and I do my writing, and, sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not great, but that's what I do. I go and do that. And if you have those kind of creative frameworks that you can do, and you don't question whether or not you do them, like brushing your teeth is one of those habits, you just do it, then that will help you kind of live with some of your doubts and fears.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what can you say about comparison? It's really hard these days with social media, and so we can see what other authors are doing and how successful they're doing, and then we compare ourselves to them and feel discouraged. Why should we not compare ourselves to other authors?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and it's something I struggle with all the time as well. I call it comparisonitis, and it's this kind of, because I don't like the word envy, because envy implies something really negative, as in, oh, I wish that they were torn down so that I could rise up, type of thing, and that's definitely not healthy. But I don't think we can stop ourselves comparing ourselves to other people. So I look at someone like Stephen King, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I wish I could be Stephen King, and then I'm like, okay, he's 70. So I'm 42, and I'm like, could I be the kind of writer Stephen King is by the time I'm 70? Yes, I could, by applying what he has applied to his writing life, which is consistent writing over, I think he started when he was like 14 or something. So, so this is the way to use comparisonitis. It's, okay, why am I feeling this way about this particular person? Because it's interesting, we don't feel this way about everyone. So let's take Hilary Mantel, who, if people don't know, has won the Man Booker Prize several times. Wolf Hall was her most famous book, historical novelist. And the woman that, when I wrote my first novel, my mum said, why don't you write something nice like Hilary Mantel? And I was like, okay, right. But the comparisonitis, I don't feel like I want to be her. She's won these literary awards, but I don't want to be her. So that's fine, because I know that I'm not aiming to win a literary award. Although that might be nice, I do want to have my books made into films and TV shows like Stephen King. I want to be as well loved as Stephen King, and let's face it, as rich as Stephen King. Right. And writing genre novels. So this is the thing. So I am not comparing myself to Stephen King as he was in his 40s. I'm comparing myself to him now, and that's wrong. So, and again, we might look at an indie author who, is, let's say, using Amazon advertising very successfully, and we're like, oh, why can't I be successful like that? And maybe then we need to look at, okay, so are we actually using Amazon ads in the way that they are? So try and recognize this comparisonitis, and then look more deeply at what are the things about that person that you admire, and then how do you how do you apply that in your own life? So whether that's, okay, we'll get back to writing then, or read their books, or buy their courses, or, praise them. I sometimes do that. Like if I'm feeling comparisonitis, I will deliberately tweet something of theirs, write a review on their book, or do something that will turn my feelings into something positive so that I can use their example to further my own career in a positive way. Does that help?
Oh gosh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great idea, actually.
It is. It really is.
So, what's been your experience with imposter syndrome? It's common with authors, new and seasoned. Can you encourage our audience with your experiences and how you overcame it?
Yeah, I don't think I've overcome it. I mean, it's funny in a way, because I feel like, I've come on your podcast and I'm like, well, who am I to come on your podcast? I certainly get this comparisonitis a lot when I'm speaking at events. I mean, I even sometimes say no to speaking at events because I just feel like, well, how can I speak at that? Even though they've asked me, it's kind of weird. And especially when I go to writing conferences. So I go to Thriller Fests every year in New York, well, not every year, every couple of years in New York. And the people there are like, Lee Child and, the top of the game. And I'm like, I'm such an imposter. Why am I here? But interestingly, many of those people also talk about the imposter syndrome that they feel. So again, it's acknowledging that you have that. And, yes, talk to other writers if you feel that way. But I feel sometimes that turning our angst into therapy with other writers can kind of spiral everybody downwards. So I try and take more of a positive approach, certainly on my podcast and in my writing. I don't tend to share too much when I'm feeling like this. And, I try and look at, okay, so, how do I pump myself up in a way? Like before I'm speaking, I will listen to specific music to try and make, sort of shift my energy into something more positive. So doing things like that can help. But again, with self-doubt and imposter syndrome, it really is acknowledging it and getting on with it and then trying to live up to it. So if I admire, someone, like Lee Child, for example, it's like, again, what can I do so that I can emulate his success? So writing books in a series that readers love, writing prose that just drags you through the book. What can I learn from that? So yeah, always focusing on sort of self-development rather than putting yourself down.
Oh, that's great. And I've just been sitting here nodding my head steadily as you're going through this. This is so awesome. So when authors write a book like your mindset book, there's often an autobiographical element to it. And we all see your successes now, but what challenges did you face on your journey to being a best-selling author and popular podcaster?
Well, I mean, a lot of my challenges, it's interesting because I find that this is the career for me, but this is like my fifth business. So again, that statistic around the businesses that fail, like I had a scuba diving business in New Zealand, and writers sometimes complain that, oh, it's so expensive, I have to hire an editor. And I'm like, yeah, try having a boat and the insurance and the fuel and the staff and like dive tanks and wetsuits and and be dependent on the weather and the oil price. And I mean, that was a very, very expensive lesson for me, that business, of that failure, and also taught me a very important lesson, which is I do not want to have a business that's dependent on a physical location, physical assets like a boat, expensive, things like that, to be out of control with my cash flow. So many lessons from that experience. I mean, that was probably my biggest failure. It also caused the breakup of my first marriage. So had huge ramifications in my life. And at that point, I really did feel like, what am I going to do? I was completely broken. And I would say here that writing was what pulled me through that time. Psychologically, I actually left New Zealand. I went traveling. I was in Egypt and a whole load of other places. And the journals that I wrote during that sort of 4 months after the breakup of my marriage, I don't even recognize that person anymore. But writing can be that therapy. And actually, I'm going to share some of that in the book I'm writing at the moment, The Healthy Writer, about writing as therapy. But, just sharing that story, that was kind of my rock bottom. And from there, I should say, kind of happy ending. I'm very happily married to my second husband now, and yeah, we've been married for 9 years, so everything's all good. But that I learned a lot there, and then I went on to do property investment, and learnt the lesson that I don't want to be dependent on physical assets for my income. And then I started writing, and in terms of the challenges, I mean, when you start writing, you have no audience. Like anybody else, winding the clock back, in 2008, in 2006, when I started writing, I had no audience. I had no book. I had no social media. There was no Kindle. There was no iPhone in 2006, if you can believe it. It's kind of crazy to think how different the world was. And yet I wrote down in my diary, I actually found it last night. I was talking to my husband. In 2017, I will be making a 6-figure income as a writer. And I wrote that back in 2007. So that was my 10-year goal. So it's kind of amazing to be here right now, but the challenges have been the same as anyone else. It's been doing the writing, which, let's face it, is a daily challenge, as well as marketing, learning how to run a creative business, and all the rest of the things that we do.
Wow. What a great story. And I think it's so encouraging, like just to hear your progression, like kind of that you tried multiple careers, you tried different interests, and you really just saw that writing was your true north. It was the thing that really made your heart leap. And it's just great to see that not only that, but that you were able to have the foresight in 2006 when technology was kind of at its infancy for sharing content and writing and books, that you would be a 6-figure author. I love hearing those mindset stories. It's so inspiring. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, no worries. And I would really encourage people to write down your goals. Like, I really am a fan of writing down your goals. And they might be, short-term goals, 10-year goals, big goals, money goals, success goals. I have written down, one of my books, or, my books will be made into film and TV. I write that down every year. And I want to be a 7-figure author. And, given my trajectory financially as a writer, it is simple maths. I know people who make 7 figures, 8 figures, and they just have multiple more books than me. So I know that if I keep writing at the pace I'm writing, then I will get there. So this is the thing. I think we overestimate what we can achieve in a year, and we underestimate what we can achieve in 10 years. I'm pretty sure that's Tony Robbins or someone like that. But, you can do so much over time if you consistently put in the work.
Wow, that's powerful. I like that. I like the over and under. That's really good. Now, on the other side of that, you're also known for your marketing skill. You've always had a finger on the pulse in the industry. That's one of my favorite parts of your podcast is just your opening, where you really talk about what's happening and trending in the industry. How do you recommend authors stay on top of the market the way you do?
Oh, listen to my podcast, clearly. There are definitely, I really recommend the Sell More Book Show podcast with Jim and Brian. They report on it's a weekly podcast that does news and tips, marketing tips specifically. The Self-Publishing Formula podcast also focuses on marketing. I try and do much wider topics on my show, but the reason I've this year republished How to Market a Book is the updated 3rd edition, and it's a big book, is because I'm kind of a student of this stuff because I want to sell more books, and it's funny because what we become known as is kind of hilarious, because the reason I got into marketing is because in 2008 I was sitting on 2,000 print books in my garage and I realized, oh, okay, now they're in my garage. How do I actually sell these books? Like, I literally did that classic mistake of, oh, now I have a book, everyone's going to want it. But this, again, before Kindle, before CreateSpace, that, how you couldn't do it then. And you had to ship things from your garage and no one knew who I was. I didn't even have a website. So it was like, okay, now I need to learn marketing. So my degree is in theology. I don't want anyone to think I have a degree in marketing. It's all self-learned. So if you're feeling that marketing is like, what do I do? Then you learn it over time, like everything else. It's just something that you can learn, and it can be as creative as other things, like we're so lucky to have things like Instagram and Pinterest now, where we can do visual marketing, and marketing can actually be fun. That's what I want people to think.
Yeah. And you know what? You segued right into my next question, because I wanted to ask you, what are some, just give me 5 examples of really fantastic ways that you've marketed and promoted your books that are really creative that our audience can actually implement.
Okay, well, there's creative versus what really works. So,
let's talk about what really works. And if it's creative, then it's creative.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go for what really works first, which is using email list services like BookBub, FreeBooksy, Booksy, Bargain Booksy, and all of those types of services. I mean, at the end of the day, I met an author the other week who basically doesn't even bother doing anything else. All she does is stack ads with these email services. And there's lots of them. You know, every week, basically, she's doing a different paid promotion on her books. So that's definitely would be my number one tip, especially if you don't have a market, an audience at all. This is definitely a good start. Then, building your own email list is obviously a good idea, because then over time you can kind of wean yourself off those paid email lists. So that's really good. But I guess in terms of creativity, one of the thing that I have built my business on is content marketing. And I think content marketing gets a bad rap these days. I don't know why, but content marketing is basically blogging, podcasting like we're doing. So this is content marketing. It's kind of longer form content that is held on your website. So it's not social media. It's not Facebook. It's not Twitter. It's not Instagram. It is things like blogging and podcasting, long form content that people get a lot of value out of and that is more evergreen. And the secret to this, I think, is SEO, or search engine optimization. And many of us have heard of that, but are you actually implementing it? So, for example, in your headlines for your podcast episodes, or for your headlines for your blog posts, are you looking at what people are actually searching for? And so many authors are not doing this. They're like, my day at the festival, whereas they should do something like, what I did when I went to Venice to see Damien Hirst, 7 lessons learned about art and money from Damien Hirst, art and money being the keywords there. So thinking about that, and I'm doing it with my fiction as well at J.F.Penn.com. So for example, 7 ways that the world is going to end. Because I wrote a book called End of Days, which is kind of an apocalyptic one, or 15 strange things to do in New Orleans, or New Orleans, as it is, stuff like that. And I have several books with New Orleans in. So these are the types of things you can do that are creative, but also focus on the audience. Okay, so that's 3. Then let's just do 4. So finally is the image, yes. The image marketing. So with an image, you can, with one image, so say, and I love graveyards. So I say this a lot, I'm a taphophile. I like going to graveyards and taking pictures of sculpture and, beautiful things like that. People send me graveyard images from around the world now. But when I take a picture at a graveyard or of a sculpture or something, so I take the picture, so that's doesn't take long at all. Then I put it on Instagram, on Twitter, on my Facebook page for whichever author brand it's related to. I put it on Flickr, and then I'll send it out to my email list in my next newsletter. So one image that can bring your words alive. And I think, again, authors don't use images enough on their websites. The web now is going more and more mobile, and we're so used to, flicking through things on social media, and images are the things that will make your content stand out. So definitely think about image marketing, whatever you're doing.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. So I'm going to rephrase my question a little bit, because obviously our audience can tell just by our talk with you so far that you're one of the most successful self-published authors in the industry. What are the best advantages authors have over traditionally published authors?
Well, and again, it's funny you should ask this, because I spoke this weekend at a conference that was very much aimed at traditionally published authors. And I was meant to talk about marketing. And as I said, the very first thing, the biggest thing with book marketing is a price promotion. So indies, this is very easy. You can very easily lower your price to 99 cents or free, and then pay for something like a BookBub or a free Booksy, and send your book rocketing up the charts with a short time price promotion. Now, if you don't have control over that pricing, it's very hard to do this. So I would say, right now, price promotions are the biggest thing that sell books. I hit the USA Today list last year with a price promotion on books that were 5 years old. So, you don't even need to do it with a new book. So I think price is definitely one thing that we control that's awesome. The second thing would be cover design. So when you're traditionally published, most authors don't get a say. And if you do get a say, it's a very small say in the cover design. And many authors are very unhappy with the cover design from their publishers. And if they get the rights back, they often change the cover. So for indies, changing our covers again is very powerful. So I have relaunched and rebranded a number of my books with new covers, and then put them, say, into new categories, which we can also control. And that really, really helps, because often, you think a book will hit this market and then it doesn't. So you need to change it up a bit. So relaunching your book with a new cover, even a new title, and then changing your price, sending it up the charts in a new category. This can be incredibly powerful. And then the other thing I think for indies is speed. With traditionally published authors, they are very often sort of limited to publishing once a year, which with the sort of growth of ebooks and Kindle, many readers want more than that. And also length of the book. So most of my traditionally published friends have to write sort of 100,000 word books, but I can write 2 books at 60,000 and sell them at the same price and make 70% royalty and, do 2 in a year. So I end up making a lot more money. So, I personally think there are a lot of benefits to being indie, which is why I am indie. And I think if you have a business mindset, then it is the better way. However, many authors don't have the business mindset and want someone to do all that for them and might not be concerned about money. So if you're not so concerned about money and the business and all that control, then traditional publishing might be the way. Now, if I did get a deal for something that was awesome, like film and TV rights or foreign rights or, other stuff like that, then hey, I'm up for it. but I love the control we have as indies. It really is just fantastic.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love being in control of my stuff. And I hear about people who have lost control and really wish that they had it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you have a question, Chris?
No, I'm just taking it in. It's fantastic. I love. I came off a book festival this past weekend, and we had like 140 independent authors there, and it's such a cool thing to see the creativity that comes out of the indie market. And I wish that more people in a general audience space really could see that, because I know a lot of times people gravitate towards the big box stores, the Barnes and Nobles, or the Books A Million, or the big box stores to see all the traditionally published stuff. But there's so many cool and creative things that come out from indie authors that people just aren't hip to.
Yeah. I do think this is changing. I think slowly, but if you look at how music has changed, so how independent musicians are doing now and how many music lovers will gravitate to indie musicians or indie film over Hollywood. You've really seen a backlash against Hollywood, in recent years, as their big hits have been more and more samey, along the same lines. The same in traditional publishing, the books that do well in the big box stores, as you mentioned, they're all getting quite samey and the sales aren't so big anymore. So I think we are beginning to see a move towards consumers wanting independent labels for film, books, TV. If you think about the craft beer market, a lot of people would rather drink a locally brewed craft beer than they would, a massive chain beer as such. Yes. So I do think things are changing. I think particularly amongst millennials and amongst whatever the other people are underneath that. Is it Gen Z or whatever?
Yeah.
People in their 20s and 30s don't care so much for the massive brands and are looking much more for the more handmade, the more artisan type of stuff. So I have, and as you say, the energy is there too. And so I think that will communicate itself over time.
Yeah. So I want to change tack just a little bit and ask you about Patreon. You've been using it for your podcast. And I'll admit, this is a selfish question. I'm very curious how it works for you. And if you could explain to our audience exactly what Patreon does for you.
Yeah, sure. So Patreon is incredible. So it's Patreon. So if people want to have a look. And the idea behind it is that in history, most creatives have been funded by patrons, people who support them financially so they can do their art. And I think really it started in the sort of comic book and, physical drawing art space and has now moved into writing, into all kinds of things. It's really interesting. I support a number of podcasts on Patreon, as well as authors who, are incredible and need support. And this is the thing. So you can go and have a look at on patreon.com, have a look. It's a bit like Kickstarter in that it's independent creatives, but Patreon is a recurring model. So instead of paying for one big project and then you get a book or you get something at the end, Patreon is like a recurring monthly subscription where you pay a small amount every month. So I have people, my podcast is free, the Creative Penn podcast, anyone can listen. But if you want to donate, you can go on patreon.com/the Creative Penn and you can go and see how many people are supporting me, if you like. And essentially people pay sort of between $1 and $5 twice a month. So even though I podcast every Monday, I only charge for 2 shows a month. So some people are only sort of doing $2 a month, but it completely adds up. So for me, it's now up to, I think, around $1,400 US a month, which is fantastic because it's really good. It pays for, so that's about 750 people, some of whom are paying more, 700-ish people who are paying to support the show. And if you've heard of 1,000 True Fans, which is like this idea by Kevin Kelly that if you have 1,000 people who will support your work, you can survive as a creative. I think it really ties into that. So what I would say with Patreon is a lot of people are jumping in assuming that it's going to be a way to make a couple of grand a month, but it's not. Because I've been podcasting since 2009. I have over 300 shows now, 300 episodes. And the people who are supporting the show are often people who've been listening for a long time and have had value from the show. So I don't believe that you can just come out of nowhere, put up a Patreon page and assume that people are going to find you. A bit like Kickstarter. Most things don't get fully funded on Kickstarter. So you have to think about that. Also, when I started it, I was very nervous about starting it because, it was a free show. And I was like, okay, so if you want to support the show, I was a bit embarrassed. And now I understand that people want to support you if they get value. So provide value and then put your Patreon page up and then see what people want. So I do an extra Q&A show every month for Patreon supporters only. So they get extra audio. They also get my ebooks and audiobooks when they come out. So you have to have some goodies as such. But yeah, it's much easier if you have an audience already. I guess that would be the point. Like you guys do. You could definitely give it a go. Although I would say again, when I first started, I think I made about $20 in the first month. And that was depressing, and I was like, why am I even bothering? But over about 4 months, it still ticks up every month. So yeah.
Hey, well, you know what? That $20 can pay for your hosting, Well, it covers something.
Not when you have a very big show. That my hosting is very expensive these days.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. Now, you talked about having goodies. How do you determine what rewards you want to offer on Patreon?
I think the most important thing is that it shouldn't cost you anything or much. So, for example, if you offer an hour's free consulting for every person at a certain level, and then 10,000 people join up, you are going to be screwed. So what you have to do is think about scalable rewards. So free ebooks, free audiobooks, my extra audio, obviously I record it once and everybody gets it. Things where it's a scalable reward is much better than a physical. If you have to send everyone a physical book, that can be, pretty big as well.
Right. And so how is it delivered? Is it delivered through the Patreon interface, or do you have to fulfill it yourself some way?
Well, it depends. I deliver my extra audio through the Patreon interface, and then the books, people just email me and I send them to BookFunnel or whatever. I do have print books for people who support in the top tier. So yeah, they do that. And then often I just order them directly from Amazon and send them direct. So here's a little tip if people don't know, if you're sending books from the UK to the US, it's just easier to buy them on Amazon.com and have them delivered directly. Or again, if you're doing it for the UK, go to Amazon.co.uk and do it that way. So that makes it much cheaper.
Okay. And then with the interface itself, is it similar to with Kickstarter, you always put updates and you communicate with your patrons. Is it the same way with Patreon? Do you try to have an update every so often, or do you have a set schedule or a way that you do updates, or is it just You set your rewards and then that's that.
Well, you put your show on every week, so they only charge. You have to put your thing on there. So every Monday I put my show on there, and then I can charge for that show. So, I mean, I would suggest that you guys and anyone else listening who's interested, just go and have a look and sign up. Like, there's no issue in signing up. Have a look at it. Sponsor someone else, see how that goes. Find something you like and just sort of experience it. I do think it's a growing revenue option for creatives, and certainly with podcasting, because as you guys know, it's a lot of work and most podcasts don't make any money. So, I podcasted for years before I made any money, but you don't podcast for the money generally, but I think Patreon can really help. So yeah, definitely go and check it out.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Yeah, that's great. So we're running out of time. So before we wind down, Joanna, would you like to tell us about what new things you have coming along in the near future?
Yeah, sure. So for fiction, I'm working on a fantasy called Map of Shadows, which hopefully will be out by Christmas, first in a new series. So I'm excited about that. And then for nonfiction, I'm working on The Healthy Writer. As I mentioned, with the author mindset book, that really sort of hit home for people because everyone experiences self-doubt and all that. And in the same way, I did a survey on the Creative Penn and we had over 1,200 authors reply. And everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people are suffering from back pain and headaches and eye strain and stress and burnout and, RSI and, weight gain and just a whole load of things that everybody has issues with, because writing, although psychologically great in many ways, is physically very difficult for our bodies. And if we want to do this for the long term, then we have to look after our bodies. So I'm co-writing that book with a medical doctor. I'm not just doing it off the top of my head, which is good. And it will cover all of those, most common issues that we have. And I've also got a friend who's a poet who has bipolar, who's writing about depression. And we're really trying to make people feel that pain is something that you can deal with. So I'm really sharing a lot of my pain journey around back pain, for example, and headaches and migraine, and also, my own sort of psychological mental health with being a writer and how I've used walking and yoga to help make that better, and how to manage stress and all that, because it's so interesting. I mean, what we've done with the indie world is, we are independent, and yet more and more indies are working harder and harder and harder because of the 30-day algorithms and the 90-day cliff and, voracious readers in some markets. And many indies are getting sick. So what we want to do with this book is really try and help people. So that will be out in January 2018. And that's The Healthy Writer.
Very
awesome.
Exciting. That's very much needed. I'll tell you that.
Thank you.
For sure.
So, Joanna, what's the best way for people to connect with you and find your books?
Yeah, sure. So thecreativepenn.com, pen with a double N, or you can come and check out the podcast, The Creative Penn, on all the usual sites. I'm on Twitter @The Creative Penn. You should probably find me anywhere like that. And my all my books are on all the usual places, in ebook, print and audiobook. And my fiction is at J.F.Penn.com, F for Francis. So yeah, those are places to find me.
Wonderful. Well, Joanna, thank you so much for joining us today and inspiring our audience with your wisdom and stories. I know that I've been scribbling this whole time you've been talking, and I'm sure others will be too.
Oh, well, thanks so much to you both for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, you were fantastic. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, author, Chris here. I want to tell you about a program that I'm really excited about called Group Gold. For a long time, I would post on my Facebook fan page only to find crickets. Very few interactions, very few connections. That is before I discovered Facebook groups through the program Group Gold. Facebook Group Gold program is the most complete one of its kind to help you grow, engage, and monetize your Facebook group. Mark Mawhinney, the program creator, will walk you through every aspect of how to create, manage, and run your Facebook group so that your tribe is coming to you. It makes it easier, doesn't it? When you've got people interacting with you because they want to be there. That's the beauty of Facebook groups over Facebook fan pages. Ever since I started the Facebook Group Gold program, I've been growing my group, building my audience, and I've got people in there who are active and who want to be there, hanging out with me every single day. You can have that too. Just visit my website, www.readywritelaunch.com, and under the offer tab, select Group Gold. Then you can see for yourself the magic of Facebook groups.